All right. Yeah, sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Brady. I am a software engineer at Nordstrom Trunk Club. I went to a boot camp in 2017. It took me. Yeah, sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Brady. I'm just starting to hear my own voice in the YouTube, so I'm going to stop that. I. Oh, no. Okay. Delays all around. I think we really did break the internet. um, so I went to a coding boot camp in 2017. It took me forever to figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up. I knew from a pretty early age that I liked learning languages. I started learning Spanish in middle school as a foreign language, and then I majored in Spanish, minored in Italian, and then still didn't really know what I wanted to do when I grew up. So after I graduated college, I moved to Austria, a German-speaking country, and I learned German.
It's just learning JavaScript.
Yeah, yeah. So eventually I realized, oh, I love learning these. I like the process of learning these languages, and learning computer languages is pretty cool too. And you get to make really cool things. So let me give it a try. And yeah, I've really liked it. So it's totally it's been intimidating along the way because I had so little tech background, but I finally have the first job that I enjoy going to every day. So I'm really happy with the decision that I made.
No, I'd be happy too. You know, work at a good company, great field. I know development was fun. So yeah, like, let's hop right into it. I know when we were talking about kind of like topics to talk about, you immediately mentioned imposter syndrome. So what makes you so interested in specifically that?
Mostly just because I had it so bad.
Yeah, I think we all had it at some point, and or you know, people still have it every day.
It's crazy to hear that because I can accept the words and think like, oh yeah, okay, but it was so debilitating for me. I it got in my way from doing my job a lot of days. I was probably pretty, I guess I could say, depressed because of it. Um, and it doesn't, if you're not talking about it, it really doesn't seem like something that everyone has to the same degree. Like I felt like I was so alone in it. So it was kind of awkward to start talking about, but I gave a talk in uh, let's see, September maybe last year at a conference, and it's crazy to hear people's responses to it. I had no idea that other people thought the same things that I was thinking, and I was probably close to giving up and like quitting my job and thinking like this just isn't for me. Um, and I'm glad that I stuck it through, and I actually started working with a coach on that um, on like that problem and all these things that I was feeling. So I just would love to. I like talking about it when I can to try to help other people through it because it sucks.
Yeah, and like with imposter syndrome, like I think part of it stems from LinkedIn, but also part of it is now being kind of fixed from LinkedIn as well because people are more transparent. But usually you hear, whether it be in podcasts or on social media, hey, I did this, I accomplished this, I'm doing all this, and you're like, why am I not doing that? Or like, can I even do that?
Yeah, it's definitely the comparison to other people. I was not very active on LinkedIn back when I was going through all of this, so I don't think that LinkedIn had a huge impact on me at that moment, but I was totally comparing myself to everybody else that I worked with, people before that, people that I went to the boot camp with. We at the boot camp that I went to Dev Boot Camp, which doesn't exist anymore, but it was very pair programming oriented. And so you had someone else's skills like right up in your face every day. And it's so hard to not compare when you're working with people that closely.
Yeah, so like, wait, so coming at your boot camp, how long was it, first of all?
It was marketed as a 19-week program. And then it ended up, for me, I repeated a couple of sections, and it ended up being around 6 months. Yeah, I started in January, maybe like end of January, and then ended up in June.
Okay. So yeah, so going back to that, like, did your boot camp have like a career services?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and how did that work in terms of like what did they do the most?
Um, I think the most helpful potentially was we were not allowed to graduate until we turned in a version of a resume that we could realistically start applying with.
So if it was trash, they'd be like, hey, you're not graduating with this.
Yeah, they would give us edits. We had to meet with the career coaches and have them like sign off on what the resume was gonna be. Yeah. So they helped us. They would give us little lectures on what would make a good resume, and I think I have some different opinions now. I mean, now I have more free time to think about that sort of stuff. It was
True.
everyone who's been in a boot camp, I think, knows what a crazy time it can be. But they did little lectures on making resumes and how we should be reaching out to people in LinkedIn, how to reach out to people who like had already graduated from a boot camp, specifically the same boot camp that we went to, because people were likely going to be a little bit more willing to meet up with you, knowing that they had been there themselves.
Yeah, and they have information also.
Yeah, definitely. So they kind of talked us through what some cold emails like that could look like, or cold LinkedIn messages. And then they had a little spreadsheet to keep track of companies that you had reached out to.
That's important.
Yeah, and we would meet up every couple of weeks to check in on progress. And I was so burnt out. Those meetings were really miserable because I frequently had not done very much.
Were you working also at the time like another job, or it was just like full-time jobs?
No, it was full-time job search.
Okay.
Yeah, but I had gotten the nickname from my cohort, or not nickname, but they would vote like most likely to, like people do in high school.
Relatives, that's fun.
Yeah. And I was the most likely to be at the boot camp because I was always there like 7 in the morning until I would leave a lot of times at like 10 or 11 at night. So I got like really, really, really burnt out. And yeah, so even though I was a full-time job search, it was a lot of not job searching at first.
Yeah, like the burnout is tough. Like I've talked to a bunch of people, like they're kind of just nonstop all day, either learning and also applying for jobs, but sometimes to the point where it's a little bit too much. Like so balance is important in there. So
Absolutely.
when you were burnt out, like What was kind of like the thing that told you, hey, I'm burnt out, I need to like take a break a little bit?
Oh, well, I mean, I feel like I just wasn't sleeping. I was so tired and so stressed out about all the work. I was, but it didn't ever feel like I was sleeping. Like I would wake up from really light sleep and I was programming in my brain. And I would
People can relate to that.
and I would get mad at myself. I was like, "No, I just want to have a break from programming for a little bit." um,
And it's tough when you love it, because like that's why I hear is like people are like, yeah, like I'm so excited to collaborate. I'm so excited to kind of work on anything really. So it's a good thing, but then also the passion might hurt you.
it was honestly by the end of the program, it was not passion driven. I was just worried about not being good enough to graduate. So that's why I was putting in a ton of hours.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and obviously, I graduated. So I guess I at least achieved what was necessary for me to graduate. But it was like halfway through the program, I was like, this is just too much. I need a break. But I couldn't take a break at that point.
Yeah, you gotta keep pushing. So then after you graduated, how long was it until you got a job?
So I graduated, I think I said mid-June earlier, but it was actually mid-July. I graduated in mid-July and I got my first day on the job was November, like the first week of November.
Okay.
Would have happened if I had actually run out of savings without having landed that job. But I think the plan was to just keep doing the job search full time until my savings ran out.
That's
And like
situation.
I had moved home, so it wasn't as scary as I guess it could have been. But I also had already been thinking of like, well, I guess I should get a part-time job somewhere just so I can like pay for food. And yeah, it was kind of probably scary, but I've done that sort of thing a couple of times in my life before, like the moving to Austria without really having a plan there. So it wasn't an unfamiliar, scary feeling. I had been through something like that before. And I guess at the end of the day, I tend to really believe that things are just going to work out. And it turns out that's what happened for me. Yeah, it was just a lot of trust.
So then you get out after 4 months, you land, at Trunk Club, right?
Yep, at Trunk Club.
So what was the main thing that you think got you that job? Like, did you change something? Did you see something? Did you get an intro?
My getting hired story is the craziest. I don't think I should have actually been hired. It was so lucky. I will preface with that. I think truly I was in the right place at the right time because they had just happened to hire or to interview other people that I guess didn't seem like such great fits for the team. They had considered me because of my background with like the foreign languages. They were looking for someone. It wasn't immediately like software engineer.
Yeah.
I got hired onto a team that was engineer support.
Okay.
So people who can look at problems differently and try to figure out what maybe is causing this thing that seems like a bug. That's a skill that's really helpful on that team. And so they thought, oh, this girl picked up and moved to a different country. She learns multiple languages. She probably sees the world a little bit differently. I think just my background was helpful for me getting the job. And then I think I'll like.
So it was like the extracurricular things,
kind of. And I think I can just arrogantly say I think I interview well
Yeah.
for jobs.
It's a big thing.
So being comfortable with the people that I was talking to, even though on the inside I was like really, really nervous, I think that was helpful also.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, so I think with like the interviews, like it's an underrated thing. Like one thing that they don't kind of teach you in boot camp is even though you're learning how to code, you have to learn how to sell. You're selling
yeah,
every interview. So
yeah,
it's like, how can you best do that while being true?
yeah, yeah. That's a very good way to word that.
Yeah, and that,
And
okay.
I think a way to sell it while being true is if you're really passionate about doing this.
Yeah,
I think that's a good way to sell it. Just the now on the other side, now that I've been in interviews with people who are trying to work with me, anytime we'll talk to the person and their eyes kind of light up when they talk about their personal projects or something, we notice. So that's maybe a tip for anyone out there.
no,
Really enjoy projects.
because also like through like practice when we match up, in terms of businesses, I always ask the business, I'm like, why did you choose that person? And the answer with 100% of them has been they were just passionate, they were excited.
Mm-hmm.
It's something to definitely show, but also don't fake it because like you don't want to be excited
Right.
about something that's not actually gonna have you excited when you're working there.
Totally.
So I want to ask you about that. So like when you were job searching, was there ever a point where you're like, hey, like I'll accept anything right now just to kind of have a job? Did you get to that point?
Yeah, I think I was there pretty early just because I again, back to the imposter syndrome, I didn't have a ton of confidence in my own skills. And then that prevented me from like working on a ton of like as much of the projects as I should have been working on. Um, like I think that imposter syndrome causes a lot of procrastination, or at least that was the answer for my procrastination. It was imposter syndrome.
You're like, I can do
And
this. Like, why even try?
yeah, so um, yeah, I probably would have taken just about any job. And actually, I mean, to be honest, I did. Somebody had came to visit one of our graduation um, ceremonies for the cohort a couple after mine, and there was a startup that was there looking for people who were needing experience. Essentially, they were wanting some people to work for free, and I started working for them for free. So um, I just felt like I needed, in that sense, I needed some um, accountability in my day because I clearly wasn't,
Some structure.
yeah, structure and needing to show, hey, this is the work that I accomplished. It's not, I don't like telling people that they should try to go work for free. I dislike that advice. But it was probably another thing. I put that on my resume. So it was probably another thing that gave the recruiter a second, made them look at my resume a second time.
Yeah, and like well, working for free. So like with Prentice, that's kind of like what we do. We match up for unpaid internships. But like kind of what initially inspired that was one of like the interns that worked with me in my last company. They said they were looking for 7 months, and then
Mm,
they're messaging companies like saying, "Hey, I work for free," but then they worked those for 3 months and got a job. So
yeah.
it's like after it's really a huge difference. But then also with the internships is also I don't think you should be working for free under like someone just trying to build a company that's not technical. Like
Yeah.
you have to be under someone that you can learn from because in those early days you're kind of like a blank slate. Like whatever kind of stuff you do early might affect how you work your whole career.
Yeah, true. Someone had actually given me, or someone recently talking about it might be worth it if you're able to evaluate, if you have to do different options. One job is saying, hey, come work for us and we're going to pay you minimum wage, versus another option working for free, like just doing an internship, depending on the values of the company, it could very well be a better deal to work for free if you're going to learn the better principles and best practices at the place where you can work for free.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like the value you get out of it, and it's like I can't remember which company it is, but I remember like there's like a certain company, like probably Tesla or Amazon, and people just like working there early unpaid would get a job. Oh, so now I remember. So one person that worked with me, they worked at WhatsApp when they were like 20 as a graphic designer for free because that's when it was like early there. Like that still gets some jobs. Like that was like one of the first things like my CTO, my last company looked at. It's like, oh, you worked at that company. Oh, you learned this, and then they got a job.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one question we had in the chat, they're asking, what about fake it till you make it mindset? I've heard pros and cons.
I think it depends on what you're faking. I definitely like code. It's kind of hard to fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Like either you know it or you don't. You can get it to work or you can't. However, some of the behavioral stuff, I think I fake it till I make it in the sense that I try to model my behavior after people who I feel like are where I want to be.
Yeah.
So a lot of times it'll feel a little bit unnatural as I'm starting to do that sort of thing, but I'm kind of like channeling that person, and it's not part of my identity yet, but eventually it will be.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think that's the part where you can fake it. And I think one thing that most people supported it, but some people kind of pushed back on it was Joey was saying for bootcamp grads to call themselves software engineers, and some people are like, but they're not engineers. But so, what would you say on that point?
So I know that I did not feel like I went to a boot camp that was called a software development boot camp, I believe is what it was called. So at that point, I didn't feel like I knew enough between a distinction of what's a software developer, what's a software engineer. I think, is that your question? Like developer versus engineer?
Well, yeah, partly. I think that's the kind of designation that these people were like arguing is that an engineer is not a developer.
Okay. I guess I still, that is still kind of hazy to me. I think a lot of people can confuse, like, just use the words interchangeably. My role now is a software engineer.
Yeah.
I guess my question back, yeah, I think it's just the words.
Yeah.
I'm a front end engineer for the most part in this current position. So if I had to give some sort of breakdown of what's the difference between a software engineer versus a software developer, I wonder if it, I don't really know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Would it have something to do with more like front end? I don't know.
If I was making a job description, like I think it would just kind of be the first word that came to my head, whether I made software engineer or software developer as a name. So that's why I thought it was like a little bit silly, but I don't know. I just always wanted to hear kind of engineers' opinion on it.
Yeah, I say go for it. If that's what you want and you have gone through the boot camp and you are creating software, I don't feel offended by you calling yourself a software engineer. I've heard people in other aspects, if you want to be like a real estate investor and you want to identify as that, if you're searching for good properties and you don't yet have a bunch of money to invest, if you start introducing yourself as a real estate investor, that can make a switch happen in your brain a lot faster. I believe a lot in like mindset and
Mind is everything.
yeah. So I think I hadn't thought about that question until just now, but I say go for it. Call yourself a software engineer.
The way I see it is like if you have the skills and if you can do that job, so like be a software engineer, which would be the same description as a full stack developer, for example, then go for it because like you are that. And I kind of think I based the same thing like in data science. Like even though my position was senior data analyst, like I was doing data science and like text manipulation and all this other kind of stuff. So like I would say, hey, I'm a data scientist because that's what I'm actually doing. And that's the same thing for these bootcamp grads. Like they're building applications, they're building software, and they're engineering it. So
yeah,
that's what they should call themselves.
yep.
So let's make a transition to my first dev job because that's kind of the position we listed down for you. So tell everyone kind of what you're doing over there.
Yeah. So I have a site that is unfortunately not current. I'm trying to do everything I can to just help people who have gone through like a coding boot camp. Really, my focus is on anyone who has an alternative path into tech, aside from CS degrees. I want to help them get their first dev job.
Yeah.
So
the point with the name.
that was the hope. I have been making like YouTube videos and then transcribing and posting all of that on myFirstDevJob.com. It's still a work in progress. I think there's a lot of that idea to be developed still, but in general, I'm coaching and mentoring people. So through that site, there's a link to talk to me and find a time. My Calendly is over there. And just trying to help people through the process of like making a good resume, reaching out to people and finding different ways of networking. There's a lot of little tricks that I feel like I've heard over the years, but it took me years to hear some of the tricks. So I'm trying to
sometimes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
with the tricks, tell us, what's one trick about interviewing, for example?
Interviewing. I think finding a way to try to calm your nerves, which for me, I have to physically take a huge breath, and I have to remind myself to take a deep breath. And reminding myself, like, if I'm getting really nervous, or if I was getting really nervous in a tech interview, that I don't need to focus on solving the problem necessarily. I just need to focus on explaining what my strategy is going to be. That kind of takes a little bit of the pressure off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know personally, like when I used to go into my first interviews, I used to come out like soaking, just like from like sweat. And it's not just because I was wearing like a suit in Florida weather. It's just like, I don't know, you just get like kind of tense.
Yeah. Yeah. So stress reduction is hard. It's like so much easier said than done. I think that's a really good part to try to practice by putting yourself into other situations where you have to practice explaining these hard problems to other people, whether it's in an interview or not. Another trick, I feel like if you don't have questions to ask people who are interviewing you, you're kind of telling them that you don't care about actually getting the job.
Yes.
So the night before, even if you're just going online, Googling, like, what are good questions, find a list of questions. Yeah. I literally wrote down a list before my interview, and every single person I talked to at the interview, I would look at my list and I would like apologize to them, which wasn't necessary, but I was like, sorry, I'm going to forget the questions I wanted to talk to you.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I actually interviewed two people today, and the first person they had questions, but their questions were more about for themselves. You know, they're asking how does this work for me? How like I like to do this, would this be able to be possible? But then the second person, they were asking questions about the business, like how does it work?
Yeah.
So you do that? Wow, that's cool. So like it's also a type of questions. You want to make sure that
Yes.
you're not being selfish with it, for example. Um,
Yeah.
and like I remember one big tip I heard was if you can make the interviewer feel like you're interviewing them, then
Mm.
you'll probably impress them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think I did a little bit of both of those things because you are interviewing them.
Yeah, you are.
You don't want to join the company if they're going to work you 15 hours a day. um, yeah, it's definitely you interviewing them and um, being interested in how you can help their business for sure.
Yeah, and then I haven't gone through technical interviews, but what about for those? Are there any like tips on that end in terms of prep and then also nailing it?
Mostly just practice, I think. um, I think for practice, there's plenty of websites that you can find, like Code Wars. I like Interview Cake. I think since COVID started, they've had a huge discount. Um, I used to see it as I need to solve this on my own. Otherwise, it's not like I'm not actually good enough to be a software engineer. But now I'm realizing, first of all, that's a really silly metric to be using. Like algorithms specifically,
Yeah,
most tech jobs are not going to be revolving around how many expert level code wars or whatever leak code challenges can you do. Um, I see, yes, strategic thinking, logic is really helpful, but there's so much else that a person might excel at as a software engineer that it's kind of silly that that is so many tech interviews. But if you do feel like you need to practice that, the rule that I've heard is don't get stuck for more than 20 minutes. If you get stuck for 20 minutes, look at the answer. Once you look at the answer, I say still double down and try to make that into pseudocode. Like hopefully everyone has heard about pseudocode. When you first see this problem, try to break it down into English. That's the pseudocode, and then go from it as an algorithm. So if you really were stumped by the problem, look at the answer and then from there do the pseudocode. The more you can, even when you know the answer, if you can like cover it up and then go back and solve it on your own, that's just going to make it sink in that much more. And then like wait a day or so and go back and do that same problem without looking at the answer first, and you may solve it first try. So yeah, so once you've done that, like, and there's been one day in between, then just start extending that. So you are reviewing, but that sort of code challenge is really in your memory, because once you have done a lot of questions, you'll see the patterns in a lot of those algorithms, and you'll notice like, oh, this is a recursive problem. I know how to do recursive problems. I have to figure out my base case and just kind of go from there.
that makes sense. So then take it back in time for getting an interview. So you're talking about the resume. You have some tips over there as well. So what can you kind of recommend for people there?
Um,
Like
I'm trying to
yeah,
think of like,
we had the event like 2 weeks ago on it, but if there's anything extra that you got, because I know you go through the full coaching cycle with with bootcamp grads?
Yeah, I think I've got a lot of, and everyone is starting at a different point with their resume. So it's a little bit, I haven't thought about what general information to give out. I know one thing that is lacking, ended up getting hired. I was just lucky that the economic environment was different back then.
That's one thing.
I need to, you need to add a bunch of metrics in whatever way you can. When you can add a number, it makes it sound more believable and more important. Not even necessarily that that's the case, but it gives people some sort of point of reference.
Yeah, and that kind
A
of
lot.
goes to the that's like marketing basically, and so it's like back to you teach the technical skills in bootcamp, but you have to learn sales, marketing, and yeah, like you mentioned, when it's concrete, it's more believable and it's more like digestible for a person. So
Yeah.
you can see, okay, so they increased this by 50%. Like I can see how that works. But if you just say, built an app, they'll be like, so what was it? Like,
Yeah, exactly. So a good kind of framework for a good bullet point would be what you did, like starting with the verb type thing, how you did it, like maybe in what language, and then what resulted from that. So that could be the metric right there.
yeah, that's like the STAR method: situation, task, action, result.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's easily digestible for that, and also in interviews as well. That's how you present what you did.
Mm-hmm. And that kind of brings up another point. If you, or it just popped into my head, don't try to make it chronological.
Okay.
Try to prioritize, like, what do you want to grab their attention most, or what do you think is your best sell, and put that as high as you can.
So would you put like your job experience out of order? Like what? Let's say,
Oh, experience wise,
or you just went chronologically in terms of like sections.
sections. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, for that, yeah, I agree. If you have more education on something but not more experience on it, then I think yeah, showing hey I learned this would be the first thing you want to know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, one question we have on YouTube, they say, what's the best answer in an interview for tell me about yourself?
Gosh, there are so many different ways to attack this, and I think my favorite way is to give some background that explains, like, why, kind of like what I gave at the beginning, why software development, especially considering I got into it a little bit later.
Yeah.
So why am I so excited about becoming a software engineer? And like why that might, like why I'm interested in the company.
Mm-hmm. Well, for the about yourself, would you include the company there?
Um,
Or I guess you can kind of like tie it in. So you're like,
I guess it's just a tie-in. Yeah.
hey, like I've been a runner all my life, so that's why I think like Nike's mission to just do it would be great.
Yeah. I guess, like, I guess what I was thinking of, I had, for my interview question where I currently work, I'm pretty sure they would have asked me, tell me about yourself. And so I gave that little explanation about myself. And I also had mentioned how I focused at the boot camp. I focused on Ruby because I knew that that was part of the tech stack.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it was an exaggeration to tie it in with every single company. But if there is some little perk of why why you might be a really good fit, try to just like bring that up in your in your summary about yourself.
Yeah, and I remember when I was like interviewing in college, like I used to write out the about me section, like what like basically what I was gonna say for that question. I used to write it out like so many different ways, and I used to obsess over it. But yeah, I think in terms of translating who you are, it's yeah, like you said, what's the most relevant for it. So like if you're applying for either like a design position, you want to say, hey, my name is Rob. I recently learned design at this boot camp. I've worked on some projects like redesigning Zara's website and this and that, and I think it would translate well to this company.
Yeah, I had. I mean, you obviously heard my summary of myself for this context.
Yeah.
I remember in college, I had a class where we were supposed to think ahead of where we might want to apply someday. And I really liked travel and fashion. And I decided I should focus this school project on trying to work at Condé Nast, the magazine. And so my about me, or the tell me about yourself, was talking about how both of my parents were artists. My dad's a photographer. My mom is an interior, not interior designer. She's a graphic designer. Sorry.
It's all around you.
Yeah. So art was all around me growing up. And something about how like that you can't it's kind of like just native to you in that sense. So yeah, I'm not explaining this extremely well, but trying to give that story.
Yeah, you want to bring your background and tie it into like why that background would fit with that company.
Yeah.
Okay, well, one question I had might be a little bit vague, but they had, what are 2 to 3 general insights you can give for a bootcamp grad that has their first telephone interview coming up at a company they want to work for?
I think make sure to discuss like why you want to work there in that call. Again, that passion. Anytime somebody is excited about a company, it is really obvious, and it's going to help you in that sort of environment, in that interview. So especially if you can prove, like if someone is really interested in like diversity and inclusion or something, and the company is clearly showing these values of diversity and inclusion, if you can show that you have, like, I don't know, volunteered or worked previously in a setting where you had this experience trying to help along the diversity and inclusion, bring that up for sure.
Yeah, and what like is with phone interviews, sometimes they're just trying to disqualify people. So like they'll ask you a question and like it might be a yes or no, and just based off of that, you might get eliminated. And it's nothing based on your interview skills. It's just they had a list, and that's kind of like the phone screen is for to not waste any more time.
Another little tip that somebody gave me, and I was really glad that I took the advice. Even if it's phone interview with no call, get dressed up and look professional while you're on that call. It's going to come across.
Yeah, like for me, it's like we're not in interviews, but you know, every morning, like I never have meetings in the morning, but like I'm just like in shorts and a tank top. But then in the afternoon, I have meetings, so like I put on jeans, I put on shoes, and like make sure that I feel like I'm at least like an official environment.
Yeah.
So it goes back to what you said, like it's all in the mind. It's like the way you position yourself mentally is how you're gonna perform physically or talking to people.
So much, yes.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple other questions over here. What was it? If you could narrow it down to one key piece of advice make yourself stand out to employers, what would it be? So just to narrow it down, I think it's also they're referring to like pre-interview. So like, how do you get noticed for the interview?
um, it's it's turning into two already. But it's keep coding,
Yeah.
like, and try to have a presence of what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So, like being on LinkedIn or being on Twitter, showing these things that you have done. And I've seen a lot of people post after they graduate, like, "Hey, everybody, just so you know, I just graduated this boot camp." Um, I probably did something very similar to that. And I think it's much more effective every time you're posting something. You don't have to be asking for, like, yeah, I just graduated, so let me know if you have any job openings. Like right now, that's really hard to come by. People aren't just handing out jobs.
Yeah.
So as you're working on things, yes, do all the posting and be present on that social media, but just talk about, like, this is the thing that I did, or this is the problem that I came up against today. Don't necessarily make it focused on, I'm looking for a job, please give me one.
Yeah. And then, well, for me to harp on that, like, I think if you want to stand out, do what others aren't. So like, while people are kind of scared of cold outreach, like a LinkedIn or email, sometimes that will like finagle yourself into an interview. Like, these people were like, I wasn't planning on talking to them, but they asked me some random question that was unrelated, and then somehow like tied it back into, hey, like I'm looking to do this. Can you help me with it? And I'm like,
Yeah,
all right, like we've been talking, so like I guess I'll help you out.
yeah, yeah,
It's like building that rapport with someone, and then it's like it's less, hey, hire me, and more, hey, let's have a chat and see where it goes.
yeah, yeah, totally. I've tried to refer multiple people that it's almost always been, I've been helping them in some way, and then I know somebody, but because we have this relationship already, like it just happens to be that I'm trying to help them get a job.
Yeah.
Um, like I'm not even getting paid for any of that, but I'm helping them in whatever way I can, because once I have a relationship with somebody, I pretty much want to help them in whatever way I can. Um, people people want to help their friends. So yeah, that's totally, I can echo what you said.
Yeah, and then it's also kind of on the topic of like mentorship. Um, I know I was talking to Jason Cox. He's actually going to be on this on Tuesday. But we're talking about with mentors, and he's like, yeah, you basically kind of have to get someone to mentor you without knowing that they're mentoring you officially.
Yeah. Um, I've talked to people about this before. One of so I co-host a meetup on the weekends.
Yeah,
And
everyone, for happy hour.
that's it. Yep. Um, and Rod will be special guesting this weekend on Sunday.
Today, 1 p.m. EST. Uh,
Hmm.
are you going to post a link to that, or are you going to send me that later?
I can send it to you right now.
And then I'll post it in the YouTube chat so everyone can check that out also.
Cool. So we've talked about this before, and I feel very strongly that you don't want to go up to somebody and say, "Hey, you're a really good developer. Would you be my mentor?" In a work setting, that could work. However, if it's not in a work setting, that could just be coming on too strongly.
Yeah.
Because that might require like regular meetings outside of that person's work schedule. People tend to be busy. Yeah, so I like that idea a lot. Not necessarily letting them know that you're using them as a mentor.
Yeah, to trick them. It's a mental thing.
Yeah, it's also a really big compliment after you've been helping somebody if they refer to you as a mentor, like, oh, I didn't realize you viewed me that way.
Um, so yeah, like in terms of my first dev job, like how do you choose people you help out with, or is it kind of open to anyone that needs help?
I'm trying my best to help anyone who needs help.
Most of the people that just reach out, or is there a process?
Yeah, people just reach out either through LinkedIn or you can email me through the site. Those are the best ways. Eventually, I'll probably end up referring you to that Calendly link.
Calendly's the best.
Yeah. Because I do, like, my schedule tends to block up a couple weeks in advance. But yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. You have full-time jobs, probably just split like weeknights and then some weekends, if that.
At this point, I'm trying to just do weeknights.
Exactly. You gotta have some time to relax.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. So Brady will send me the link for the happy hour. I'll post it in the live chat and also in the community so that everyone will be able to see it and join. And what can they expect on Sunday?
So the way it typically works, it's AMA. Sorry, I accidentally sent you the link to the whole meetup, but here's just the event. So it's in the Teams meeting.
All right.
It's AMA. We have a Slido, so people can post questions in advance, and then people can upvote the questions that they definitely want to hear. I'm usually the moderator, so I typically read out the questions, and then we go from like most upvoted down to least upvoted. And it just is whatever the audience is wanting to know about.
Yeah.
That can change greatly based on, whoever our guest speaker is for the week. But then if that person has said something that, like, it's kind of a lot like what today was, really.
We'll get
um,
questions. It's all good.
yeah, totally. If the guest, like, reminds me or reminds Sam, the other co-host,
Sam.
something that we really want to add to that, then we will. They've been pretty long recently. They've been like around 2 hours long, which is nice because it means that people's questions get answered. But
Yeah, that's a big thing.
it's long.
Yeah. Well, all right. So hopefully we get to see a lot of people there in the audience. Or one second, we got one more question. Is there any particular problems that you face at work that keep you up at night? I.e., something that you think about even after you leave the office.
I mean, I feel like I've come so far with imposter syndrome, but I don't think it ever fully goes away. I can for sure say that fears stemming from imposter syndrome used to, like, keep me up at night.
Yeah.
I've made videos, and that was, gosh, I've had multiple moments at work where I just end up at these crazy conclusions that I'm getting fired, or like my boss doesn't think I'm good enough, and like that specifically kept me up at night. Probably like a year and a half ago or so, there was a meeting that was scheduled with my VP of engineering. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get fired. Which is so stupid.
Those unexpected meetings. What is going down?
Yeah. But problems that keep me up at night, I can't say that I have any at the moment, luckily.
No, that's good. So yeah, everyone, if there's no problems that keep you up at night, when you get a job, everything's fine and dandy. But yeah, so again, join us on Sunday. I'm trying to paste the link, which will probably go up after this is posted. But you'll get to see more of this along with Sam, who I know is a very interesting guy as well. But once again, Brady, thank you so much for sharing your insights. It was great talking, and I can't wait to do it all again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here, and I had fun. So hopefully I
That is the best.
said something that was helpful.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.